All right. One last video. I'm hoping to highlight a couple big picture ideas you take away from the course and continue to think about well after the course is complete. 5 quick courses for our finale. First, the appetizer course. I want to say, as someone very new to teaching entirely online, thank you for your patience with me, with the wonky quiz questions, clunky syllabus, awkward videos. This is the last one, promise. Trying to learn Canvas on the fly. Obviously, I have a lot to learn, but I hope the flexibility and extra credit opportunities kind of smoothed over some of the glitches. I also want to express my deep appreciation for your continued engagement with the course. Online courses, especially in just a compressed month, require a lot of discipline, a lot of determination on your part. And I know many of you are taking multiple classes, working full-time jobs, multiple jobs, traveling, managing families. It's really inspiring for me to see the overall quality of the work that you've put in and day out over the last 4 weeks. Despite the intensity of the course and relentless onslaught of assignments, I hope you were able to have a little fun learning about food history and some of the larger issues related to food and identity. I've learned a tremendous amount about food and identity from all of you, your own opinions, your analysis about everything we've covered, so thank you for that. I think you've already gotten an email about doing course evaluations, which I think is weird because the course isn't over yet. But it's a standard university thing. I would really love if you would do those evaluations, especially the short answer questions to say what worked for you in the course or what didn't work for you. What helped you learn? What topics did you think were interesting and exciting? Which ones should get cut, voted off the island? I already know there's some bad quiz questions, okay? Those are going to get thrown out, so don't worry about those. Any suggestions you have for the course on the whole, I would love to hear them. It's anonymous. I have no idea if you respond or not. But there's some sort of universe karma thing that will reward you later, I'm sure. I'd be totally grateful for any suggestions you might have. So thanks in advance for the evaluations. On to the salad course. I just want to say a quick word about final course reflections. I'm not going to walk through the assignment guide or bring it up here. I think it's clear enough. You'll let me know if you have any questions. I just want to highlight that there's really 2 main goals to these final course reflections. One, take note that they're 1,200 words, so it's a little bit longer than the stuff we've been writing. Give you space to show what you've learned over the last month. The first main goal is to make an argument for your grade for the class. And this is because I think the numbers that you can see in the gradebook in Canvas don't always reflect reality. You can never get a grade lower than what Canvas says. That's what you've earned. That's yours for sure, but you can get more as well. And so I'm looking for you to explain why you think you deserve a higher grade than maybe the numbers, the raw scores, indicate. Quizzes don't necessarily reflect your engagement. Maybe there's just an awkward, well, for sure, there was an awkward question or two. Maybe you misread one, maybe you skipped one, whatever. It's easy to lose a couple points here or there. I don't want anyone's grade lowered because of a few quiz questions. Reflection prompts may not have touched on issues that you thought were really interesting. So you learned a lot, but it wasn't necessarily what I asked you about. So maybe you didn't get as many points as you might have. So this is your chance to share with me things that you've learned that you found interesting, things that didn't work maybe very well, that show that you're engaged with the class. So the way you do that, the way you make an argument for your grade, is to tell me about your learning experience. It's maybe what you're thinking about as you're writing the final and reflecting back over the last month of all these different topics. Please let me know about what issues, topics, ideas, readings resonated with you, ones that really sort of captured your interest, or ones that you found totally boring and uninteresting, or stuff that you already knew. Maybe it was too confusing, unhelpful, just too boring. Whatever the case was, I want to know what your experience was. Most importantly, as you're doing that, as you're describing your experiences in the last month, don't just say what you liked and didn't, because that really doesn't tell me very much. Tell me why. And when you give specific examples and you're able to connect different parts of the readings and different topics together, that shows me you really learned something. So that's what I'm looking for. Incidentally, I do all the grading of the finals, so you're really talking to me at this point. The graders have done a fabulous job for us, keeping us on schedule and so on. But these are all mine. So I'm looking for what you got out of the course on the whole. In order to do well on these, to make a successful argument for your grade, do not do not provide a course summary. Do not paraphrase the syllabus. That doesn't tell me anything. You could have done that before the course even started. I learned about authenticity and immigration. Okay, you need to be more specific about your learning experience. Okay, that's what I'm really looking for. I'm looking for you to be able to say something about the course as a whole, how the topics fit together, your personal experience with these, with specific examples. That's showing me what you've really learned from the course. That's not on the syllabus, right? That comes from your own thinking and own reflection, and that's what I'm most excited about. One quick point about grading, a good final sort of gets you over the bubble. If you end up with like an 89%, technically that's a B+, very close to an A-, obviously. If you end on a good note, if you have a good final reflection, you boost yourself into that next category, that next highest grade. It may have taken some time for you to get used to the course and the grading and the quizzes and the reflection and how things got scored. Maybe a couple days you just didn't have time or energy and you had some lower scores then, or maybe you missed an assignment because just the chaos of life. Whatever the case, a good reflection is a very holistic exercise, and it convinces me to discount those anomalies where there was a day or two where the scores were just not sort of up to your normal standard. I do need to hold everyone accountable for doing the work, and I need to be equitable in grading. I try my best to do that, but I'm really on your side as far as grading goes, and I think the graders have been as well. I'm trying to give everyone the highest grade, final grade I can justify and be fair to other students. On to the soup course. What do you value in food? What don't you value? It's none of my business, but I hope you'll think about it, and I hope you'll think about it more deeply than you could have before the course. Precisely because food is everywhere and it's an everyday thing, our foodways and the food landscape around us can seem inevitable. We talked a lot about inevitability in the meat production day. It can seem unavoidable, right? It seems like it's the way that it should be or has to be. But we've seen throughout the course that it's really a series of choices made every day by everyday people, just like us. They might have different values, obviously, so they'll make different choices, whether based on taste, money, convenience, tradition, health, ethics, morality, environment, profit. We project those values into the world. However we choose our food and things we eat and don't eat, we project those values into the world and shape the world around us through ongoing choices about food. Food can tell us a lot about ourselves when we think more about those choices. When we have a general sort of awareness and mindfulness and curiosity and respect for food and food traditions and food meanings and identities, I think that spills out into the broader world as well. On to the main course. We've seen historically over and over and over again how food choice and traditions present so many interesting intersections of race, class, gender, identity, health, ethics, morality, politics. Just as we can learn a lot about ourselves thinking about our own food choices, we learn a lot about any group of people by looking at their food choices, both on production and consumption levels. I talked last time about cheap food and how it's kind of a predominant expectation for most Americans in general. Here's a thought experiment. What if our default cultural outlook was to avoid cheap food rather than to expect it? So when we see the fancy organic asparagus that's twice as much as the conventional stuff that's next to it, maybe it doesn't even look as good, it's totally natural, I think, to wonder, why should we pay more for the same thing, right? We don't typically ask that question, though, about lower price food, right? We don't say, how could it be this cheap? What's making it so cheap? We just assume it should be cheap, that there's people, smart people, creative people, hardworking people making it that way for us. That's the beauty of capitalism. When we don't really want an explanation as to why. But we do want labels with happy chickens and cows and green pastures and kids running around the farm and a big all-natural label telling us everything is okay. So I think it's interesting to think about how much valuing process over product is starting to carry many of the same associations with community and identity that we've seen throughout the course. So how you might identify yourself or distinguish yourself from one other group, remember the normative authority idea from the authenticity day, how you want to identify yourself via food is no longer limited to an actual dish or ingredients or flavors, but is constructed in conjunction with how the food was produced, how the ingredients were produced. with what you perceive as the quality of the food, the animal welfare of it, how farm workers were treated, environmental impact, the amount of processed food or ingredients or natural flavors. So maybe food production is starting to be an important component of food values. So it'll be interesting to see how historians 150 years from now think about the emergence of those discussions about the process over product have shaped American food values. On the other hand, it's easy to avoid thinking about process over product. How many of your food blogs, or food media generally for that matter, talk about how ingredients get produced? But as we've seen recently in the class, people clearly, on the whole, are starting to value process as much as product, even if they don't have a lot of choice. But I think it's interesting to think about how much discussion of production processes, or lack of discussion, says something very significant about our cultural values. Finally, on to dessert. We've covered a lot of food history. If you remember any of it, awesome. I forget a tremendous amount every year. It's amazing how much I remind myself of stuff I should already know. Hopefully, the history has provided a lot of interesting examples to make connections between different topics that we've seen across the course. As I emphasized a few weeks ago, the history itself is not the main point. Critical thinking about food, more critical thinking about food, is the main point. Every topic we've covered in this class, nationalism, authenticity, immigration, dietary politics, moral reform, cultural stereotypes, innovation, adaptation, appropriation, diffusion, none of these issues are unique to food. Obviously, that's how we've been thinking about them. But food reflects them, I think, in very unique ways, because it's so closely tied to our own identity. And obviously, food is the funnest way of understanding all of these issues. In the end, I hope that thinking about food more critically helps us question not just the meanings and identities and histories about food, but also the political and social infrastructure around us, everything. A lot of this class has been about how can we think more critically about topic X, whatever the topic was. This class is all about questions. You don't get any answers. Sorry about that. We've been asking about identity. We've been asking about tradition, ownership, community, rituals, morality, cultural heritage, stereotypes, all of these things through food, obviously. But I hope you can apply these kinds of questions to literally everything around us. Lastly, I hope you'll agree with me that food is never just food. We might not want to think about its implications every meal. I definitely don't. But the choices and values that get expressed through food choice, and how we evaluate other people's food choices, and the very close ties between food and identity, is constantly shaping the world around us, constantly shaping the relationship we have with other people, with the environment, with ourselves. I hope you'll keep thinking about those. Okay, we're done. Enough. I'm really looking forward to your course reflections. Let me know if you have any questions about the assignment or course material. Thanks again for all of your hard work. I've really enjoyed learning from you this month. Take care, everyone.